Time for another special edition of Flitter Media Live. I'm Dan Ramey, and in studio with us today is Ryan Slaughter. Those of you who are in the farming industry, you know all about Ryan. You probably have met a farmer or two in your time, haven't you?
Quite a few, yeah.
He is with the Ross Ag Department for OSU, an educator and an agent. Details coming up in just a moment, but this first from Classic Brands. Farmers plant and then they harvest, and we want to take a look at the harvest yields for this year. I know that we've had can we call it a drought this summer? We had a period where we didn't get rain, but the drought year was the year before.
Yeah. Technically, this year we did end the season with a drought. Probably many farmers understand that sometime at the end of June, and we didn't see a rain really until either the end of September or even in October. So we did end the season with a drought. Of course, it wasn't as extreme as it was last year. But it was dry, and it did have some potential downfalls for our yields, the drought that we did have this year as well.
I saw something I had never seen before in 2024. Mike Smith and I were driving to Miami Trace High School for a football broadcast, and the corn looked black, and it wasn't in full growth. It just looked like something had sapped every bit of juice out of it.
Yeah, that's what, with corn yields, you're wanting to let that corn dry down naturally on its own. And as that plant grows, there's a certain point where it makes that decision that, okay, we're at the end of the growing season, and it starts to naturally dry down. Well, in 2024, it didn't make that decision. It was made for it. There was a lot of farmers that they were harvesting maybe even in August just because the corn was so dry that they were afraid of it dropping and losing that yield. So it drove that season really early last year. It wasn't great because the corn just wasn't ready. It just dried down. It was literally fried in the ground because of how dry it was. But rough year. 2024 is probably one of the roughest years we've had for a really, really long time.
I, like Jim Tressel, before he came to visit the Hartsock farm several years ago, had never driven a combine. So I have no idea of what, if you harvest a little too soon, does it gum up the combine? Or if it's too dry, does it create problems?
There's a couple things there. It does have some effect on the combine, but really the biggest thing is when you go to sell your grain, it has to be a certain moisture content. So they're looking for a specific moisture percentage when they're harvesting that grain. You can take it off a little bit higher. A lot of farmers will, if they have the capability, their own grain bins, they'll put it in their own grain bins and dry it down. A lot of these guys are using propane and these large fans that vent that warm air through the grain bins to dry it down to that moisture content. Or you could take it straight to the granary. We have one really close to here. That's probably one of the largest facilities here in southern Ohio. But the issue, if you take it at too high a moisture content, they dock you for it's less money per bushel. So, in a situation where the margins are already super tight anyways, our commodity prices are really, really low, farmers are trying to hit that perfect number so that they can get the most money out of that bushel. So if they take it in at too high of a moisture content, it's going to get docked. Mm-hmm. So they lose some money on that. On the flip side, can it be too dry? Yeah, that's also a situation. The biggest thing there is if it's too dry, you run it through the combine, you have a chance of the seed cracking. So if you harvest it, you've got this nice corn, but it's too dry, you've got cracked seed that's coming out. You take that, you're going to get docked for that too. They want the whole kernel. So that's really the game of trying to get that seed off at the perfect moisture content.
Timing's everything, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep.
In regards to, I know in previous years we've had some decent yields. Where do we stand having had these two challenging years?
Yeah, so Mike reached out and asked that question to me a couple weeks ago, and and I told him, well, I've got some kind of anecdotal evidence. I've spoken to a lot of farmers that say, oh, it's been okay, or it's not been okay. I know for sure, I don't think anybody had a good year last year, but some farms, some fields have been okay this year. So what I did, I reached out to my list of email lists. I've got a list of farmers that I send periodical emails out. I asked them if they could give me some actual hard numbers. So they got back to me, and I will give a shout out. Those who did take that survey, appreciate it, so we can get these numbers out there. But these are averages, so the numbers were kind of all across the board, but I did average them out. So for corn, a general expectation in our county is around 190 bushels per acre. That's for corn. That'd be a kind of a normal year, a good year. 2023 was a good year. We exceeded that average. We had over 200 bushels per acre in 2023, and then 2024 rolls around, an average. And there were some really good numbers that come in on this, and some really, really bad numbers. But 140 bushels per acre in 2024 was that average. So that's a 32% decrease from 2023 to 2024. And then with the excessively wet spring we had this year, that delayed planting, and then we ended the season with a drought, really another bad year for growing. We had around 166 bushels per acre. That's about a 20% decrease from what would be the expectation for these fields. So, and then on top of that, it's the price was better in 2023. So you had better yield, better price per bushel. And then you go into 2024 and 2025, you got a lot less yield, and you've got a lot less price per bushel. So you're not bringing as much yield off the field, and you're not getting as much per bushel. So it's kind of a twofold thing there. The yield's bad and the price is bad. So it's been a real rough 2 years for farmers.
And you're kind of at the mercy of who sets those prices.
Yeah, exactly. Corn and soybean and wheat are traded as a commodity. So those prices are set nationally. Obviously, there's situations where you could do some marketing yourself or through a co-op to garner a little bit better price, but really that price is set nationally. So farmer has very little to say in that.
Yeah, and I guess you most likely probably communicate with agents from other states as well. Did we see similar numbers with Illinois, Iowa, Indiana?
Sure. Midwest was hit really hard last year by the drought. I would say Ohio, especially Southeast Ohio, probably suffered the worst, even in the Midwest. The biggest thing was the wet spring this year. That was pretty widespread. Although Ohio's really been hit pretty hard the last couple of years comparatively. Yeah. Everybody's suffering, but Ohio's really been hit.
A couple of years ago, we went through Alabama, and as we were approaching the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, however you want to call it now, as we were getting down there, we were in there in July, and the corn looked like it does here in October. And I thought to myself, did they have difficult weather? What was the case? And then my father-in-law, who has farmed before, says, it's probably because they have warmer temperatures down there. They probably planted it in January or whatever. Yeah. It's just now coming around to full growth.
Yeah, their season's a lot different than ours. Typically we try to get things in April into May. The later you plant, the less yield you're going to get. But April, May is generally the big planting seasons here. But as you move further south, everything goes in way earlier. And I know I've worked a lot with specialty crops, and with strawberries, we like to, it just depends on what type of strawberry, but generally we can expect strawberries around Mother's Day in this area. And in the South, it's way, way earlier than that. They're getting strawberries out in April or even earlier than that. So it's just a accelerated growing season down there. And that opens them up for, that's why most cotton's grown in the South, because it needs a longer growing season. So we can't grow it up here. We just don't have that growing season for it. But, a little bit different. Well, it's a lot different.
I've watched over the years of driving from Pike County up here into Ross County, going by Hirsch Fruit Farm, and seeing the different development that they have with different fruits, since you brought up strawberries. But I saw that they had no issues with strawberries when another strawberry grower did. And some of that is happenstance, or is it some prepare better than others?
Well, with the strawberries, the big thing that you're probably talking about, there's a new disease that is in strawberries, and it's coming from the plant stock out of Canada. That's where most of our strawberry growers, they get these plugs, they're called, from suppliers out of Canada. And there's a new disease called it's a really, really long name, but the short name for it is neopest. And essentially, it's a fungal disease that declines the plant as it's growing, so you get less yield from it. So that's the biggest problem. I don't want to say everybody's got it, but most people are dealing with it. There's some things that you can do to not prevent it, but deal with it and get your strawberries along. But there's a lot of Midwest growers right now that are struggling because of this new disease on strawberries. And so far, the only thing that it is affecting is strawberries, thankfully. But it's tough. There's all sorts of things that are out there that our farmers are struggling with.
Yeah. The main crops that are grown here, though, on the large scale, corn, wheat, and soybeans as well.
Yeah.
Where did we fall into place? Was it a good soybean year? Was it a bad? Wheat was better?
So the data that I have gotten, wheat does not seem to have been affected so much as soybean and corn has. Wheat's planted in the fall, and then it grows through the winter. And then in the spring, it matures and is harvested, usually in June or somewhere around there. So the biggest thing with wheat this year was how wet our spring was. So there's some fungal diseases that you have to be concerned about in all crops. But in wheat, because of how wet it was, that's the biggest concern there. So a lot of these growers, they'll have to put fungicides on in order to keep those funguses from taking down the crop. So that was the issue this year, although the yields there for wheat were pretty good. And to say that is the same for last year in 2023 from what the data that I've got. Soybeans, they took a hit. I can say here that general expectations for soybeans in our area are around 57 bushels per acre. 2023, again, same as corn, exceeded that expectation. 2024, 40 bushels per acre. 2025, 44 bushels per acre on average. So quite a big drop on those two. And again, the exact same thing. 2023, price for soybeans was pretty good. 2024, 2025, not good at all. So it's just that compounding factor of less yield, less money per bushel. It's really hitting hard.
And we can see why that leads to the conversation that Bryce Acton had with us a couple of days ago about the mental stress in farming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, everything about farming is stressful. It's like, putting seed in the ground. Is it going to come up? That was a big issue this spring. And I keep saying it because of how wet it was, but we had a lot of farmers, they got the crop in early because it was a real nice spring starting in April. Yeah. They got it in early, and then it started to rain. So a lot of these fields got flooded out. Or a lot of times with seed, especially with corn, if you get a good cold rain on it right after you plant, it stunts the growth. So it might come up, but it stunts the growth, and then it sets it back for a couple weeks. So either you were in that situation, or you were going back and planting 2, 3, or 4 times. I even heard some farmers had to come back. And there's a certain point where if you don't get it in by a certain date, then you might as well not plant at all, because it's just not going to bring you enough yield to even be worth putting seed in the ground. And that was the biggest situation. And that was probably the biggest stress this season, was getting seed in the ground because of how wet we were.
Because then you have seed prices, buying and putting more in, more hours involved, more fuel involved.
Yeah, so if you plant once, you've got that expense. You got your seed, your fuel costs, equipment, hourly wages if you have employees, And then if you got to do it 2, 3, 4 times, well, you just multiplied, your price per acre.
At the price that's been lowered when you harvest it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your price isn't going up 4 times at the end of the season when you harvest it. So if you've got 4 times the expense going into it, then it's kind of a wash at the end of the year. And that's stressful, all parts of it. The weather can be stressful, the price, equipment maintenance, all that stuff goes into that.
As a young boy growing up in Pickaway County, back in the 60s and 70s, I remember dirt being turned along the side of the river that was black, so rich. Haven't seen that much anymore. Has it been over the last 40 years we've lost some of the richness of the soil?
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. That's true. There's the potential there that we've lost a lot of nutrients through tillage. But at the same time, there was a real big movement for no-till production. So essentially not tilling at all. You've got different planting equipment that can cut a furrow, drop the seed in it without tilling the ground. There was a really big push for that because of soil loss, number one, especially in those river bottoms. They flood a lot. If you've got open soil, it floods, you're going to lose a bunch of that topsoil. And that's soil, number one, but it's living. There's a lot of nutrients in it, and that's all getting washed out. So you're losing all that. So no-till really kind of helped keep that soil in place. So you plant, you don't never turn that soil. So that's probably one of the biggest factors that we don't really see soil that much anymore. And that's a good thing. There are a lot of farmers who have integrated tillage back into their systems because of compaction. You're running this equipment over top of this ground 100 times, and it's huge equipment. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Yeah. So it's compacting the soil, and so sometimes you do have to come back in with some deep tillage equipment or vertical tillage just to loosen that hard pan up that's created from the tillage. So every once in a while you'll see some soil turned here and there. But it's there, it's still rich. It's just not getting turned as much anymore as it used to be.
We see a lot of crop rotation, so maybe corn one year, the next it might be wheat or maybe even soybeans. But we've seen something in the last several years, we were talking about just a moment ago, of potatoes being grown here in our area.
Yeah, that was really cool to see. I think that came in 5, 6, 7 years ago. There's a company, and I don't know where their headquarters. I know they start in the South, in the Carolinas, and then and like you said about Alabama, they'll plant potatoes down there really early. They'll start harvesting them early summer, and then as the season progresses, they move north. They move up here into Ohio, and then they finish the season out in Michigan, finish harvesting potatoes up there. And as far as I know, I'm pretty sure those are all chip potatoes. They get harvested and then turned into potato chips, which is pretty cool.
They're really pretty when they flower.
Yeah, that's kind of neat, and that's what a lot of people talk about. Never seen these huge fields with flowers in them before, so that's kind of cool. Way different management practice for those. And you want to talk about tillage, that's a very tillage-heavy crop. They're going in, obviously it's a root crop, so they're going in, tilling, planting these seed potatoes, and they come back with this massive equipment, churning up the earth again to get those potatoes out, and then massive trucks hauling these literally semi-loads of potatoes out. And then so that's really different. We haven't seen anything like that I've never seen anything like that here in Ohio. So it's kind of cool.
I know people will plant just about anything in their gardens, and I've often wondered, why don't we grow carrots on a larger scale? But I imagine the price is what is involved there.
Yeah, with those specialty crops, it's really about, number one, carrots take a really long time to grow. They have a really, really long growing season, and it's all about soil too. Carrots like a loamy, a very well-drained, kind of light soil, because you think about it, it's just a giant taproot, so it needs to push through the soil in order to grow. Well, in southern Ohio, and really most of Ohio, we have really heavy clay soils. So it packs tight, especially when you're running equipment on it. And if you've ever grown a carrot in your garden, you know, at least in my garden, they always come out real stubby, they're short and stubby. It's because of that heavy clay content. So we don't have really great soil for specialty crops like that, especially root vegetables. Now, you are seeing a lot of potatoes planted in some of the sandier ground that we have here in Ross County and then Southern Ohio in general. And that's a lot more better suited for those potatoes because it's sandy. They can grow really large in that loose, sandy soil. The other thing is the equipment that's involved in large-scale root production is expensive, really, really expensive. Not to say none of our equipment's not expensive, but it's expensive, and it just doesn't really kind of fit the rotation of crops here on a large scale here in Ohio.
You have a higher expectation on that equipment.
Yeah.
And a challenging ground surface and everything as well, too. Yeah. So there was something else I wanted to ask you. Oh, yes. In today's vein of growth, when we see homes going up everywhere, we touched a little bit on solar farms and that sort of thing a while back. But despite all of that, we've got a lot of acreage here in Ross County that is agricultural based. Same with Pickaway County, but it's decreasing because of all the growth that's going on. Can a farmer survive over the next 50 years, you think?
Great question. Yeah, great question.
It's another question for your survey.
Yeah. Well, I'll just, I guess I would say I'd spin it positively. Yeah, of course, farmers are very resilient. If they have to diversify, they will. They've met that demand for thousands of years that we have for agriculture. Agriculture is our number one industry here in Ohio and also here in Ross County. One of the biggest things that I'll say, and I'm thankful for this, Ross County is going through a comprehensive plan. They put that out there. One of the number one things that came back for the importance of Ross County is the ag community and our land use. Mm-hmm. So that's really the big thing with that comprehensive plan is moving forward, how do we use the land that's here, the physical land that's here in Ross County to grow the economy, but also what's important to us. And overwhelmingly, Ross County said agriculture is important to us. So we've had a number of meetings with the people who are managing that comprehensive plan or putting it together to talk to them why farming is important, what we need here in the county to exceed as farmers, as a farming community. And land use is a big one. So, and I would say kind of props to the commissioners and everybody who's put this work out there. They're really trying to create space in Ross County for big business to come in, like these Anduril that went in Pickaway, some of these other companies, Honda over in Fayette, but also to limit where that's going so that farmland isn't being lost. So, to really kind of concentrate where those big businesses are coming to make it attractive, make Ross County attractive for those businesses because that's economic growth. But at the same time, to limit where that goes so that farmland can persevere. So I've really found that very positive. I'm glad that our commissioners have gotten sort of on the forefront of that to figure out what to do here in Ross County. But I think agriculture is always going to be a part of our community. We have to eat,
Right.
It might look different. No, I would say it's probably definitely going to look different in 50 years just from all changes, climate change, from the way the county operates, economy, all that stuff. It's going to look different, but farmers are always going to be here. It's going to be a big part of our community. So
it'd be nice if somehow we could say, well, that industry could go on that hill over there because we got plenty of hilly territory. Yeah. But then you have the timber industry saying, wait a second.
Exactly.
So you want to make sure that everybody's happy as best as possible.
Yeah, and timber is another big piece of our county. Yeah. It's essentially half of our county is really good for timber production and half of it's really good for agriculture, and then you've got this mix in between. So we've got two really big industries here in Ross County, and that's what makes Ross County unique compared to all the other counties. So,
about how much acreage is farming here in Ross County?
Boy, that's a
loaded question.
That's a loaded question. Those numbers are out there. Matter of fact, they're on our website. If you go to ross.osu.edu, The USDA puts out a survey every few years. We've got those numbers on the website. Yeah. I don't know it off the top of my head.
And
it's a lot.
I should have asked you beforehand. That's a big question. But you can find that out on their website. Again, that's ross.osu.edu.
Yep, correct.
Okay, so check that out and just say, what's the acreage?
Yeah.
Or you can Google it, and that'll probably take you over there too. Yeah. So anything we've missed, Ryan, that you wanted to mention?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate being invited on the show. I always love to talk about farming and in every aspect. So,
well, we need to have you in each season.
Yeah,
to come in.
I'd love that. Yeah,
give us updates.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We appreciate it. Ryan Slaughter, he is with the Ohio State University. Is that right?
Yeah.
The Ohio State University in the Agricultural Department. Thank you again for watching here today on this edition of Litter Media Live, brought to you by Classic Brands.